Hi, my name is Logan Triplett, and I'm doing a speech about nonverbal communication. All right. Have you ever wondered about the way a person can talk to people without even saying words? Or how people add more emphasis to their words without using additional verbiage? I'm here to inform you about what nonverbal communication is and how you can use nonverbal communication in your everyday life. The next time you talk with someone, you'll be able to pick up on key hints that they let off and other features that may help you with conversing. I have read and completed assignments for chapters 1 through 13 in Understanding Human Communication by Robert Alder et al. In Comms 101, Fundamentals of Oral Communication, along with other outside resources on nonverbal communication. These have given me a very greater understanding of what nonverbal communication is and how it is used. All right, so the main points I will be going over is defining nonverbal communication, the types of nonverbal communication, and how to use nonverbal communication effectively. Okay, so first I want to start out by understanding what nonverbal communication is. That's the book. So nonverbal communication, defined by the Britannica article on nonverbal communication, is defined by the transfer of information from one person to another without the use of spoken words or language. It can be very hard to define nonverbal communication because of the variety of ways that nonverbal communication is used. I would personally define nonverbal communication as messages and feelings we send to others through the way we act and move while conversing with them. It is something that allows us to add additional meaning and emotion to our sentences. Nonverbal communication is unavoidable and cannot be helped. No matter what you do, you are going to be showing different types of communication with whatever you do. Of course, nonverbal communication is ambiguous and isn't always the easiest to understand. It's very easily misinterpreted, and there are many ways that it can be seen. So shown here, you can see they're clearly talking through this, right? And this is more verbal, I guess, if you really think about it. But there's always this cluster, which is the same thing that can happen in just normal conversation. But think about someone waving at you, or if you're crossing the road and you put a hand up for the car or something, it can easily be seen as, hey, stop, or hey, go ahead, or something different. All right, so you might be wondering, why is nonverbal communication important? It's important because it allows us to just convey messages more thoroughly, and it can make effective communication easier to obtain. All right. So let's go over the types of nonverbal communication now that we know what nonverbal communication is. So one of the first things you will notice, or probably think of when you think of how people talk without words, is probably the posture and fidgeting. So posture is something that people can see in very many different ways. For instance, if I were to hunch over or something, or just kind of how this person's more sat closed or whatever, it kind of shows a lack of confidence or a more security, while someone who's in more of an open posture is more friendly and outgoing, more confident. Another big thing is fidgeting. As you'll probably see me do throughout the speech, I'm very much a fidgeter, or at least I move a lot. That is a big part of nonverbal communication, and it can be taken in many different ways. Another big part of nonverbal communication is facial expressions. Now, it's not something usually everyone thinks about right away, but facial expressions really does express a lot, as it says. These are more the universal ones here. Yeah, smiling, sadness, all that kind of stuff. They all are universal, not depending on cultures. Another good thing is eye contact here. So as you can see, this guy's presenting or doing something, he's looking directly at his audience. Eye contact usually, in most cultures, it shows a wanting to be more intimate or talk to one another. There are cultures, however, that see eye contact as a kind of rude or something that's not really well received. So let's see. Another big one is appearance, right? So that isn't just talking about your physical attributes, but it also talks about your clothing and your like body art. So take for instance, right, these Crocs. If I were wearing Crocs and like a hoodie or something, I probably wouldn't look the most formal or anything. Even right now, I'd say I'm like semi-formal. This is probably taking formal to a more extreme measure when it comes to your clothing and appearance. Another big part, of course, is the way you take care of like your hair. I'm wearing a hat because my hair is not very good right now. But even that can be seen as just wearing a hat as something that is considered informal. Another one, if Noah, you want to come up here real quick, is the body art. So body art is something that people use a lot to express themselves. For instance, he has his tattoo here, and a lot of people might see that as something more unique, something that defines him. For instance, yours, what does your tattoo represent?
It's my last name.
Yeah, so it's his last name, something very personal. Most people in our culture sees it as just like an additional part of someone's characteristic and personality. However, in other cultures, it can be seen as something more like punk related or more like a, I don't know, just not as good. You can sit down. All right, thank you. Yeah. All right. So another big part is space. Space is something that you can kind of see. So right here, we have the 4 different types of spaces defined by, anthropologist Edward T. Hall. He defined these 4 distances using the mainstream North American culture. So intimate space here is more for relationships, right? You have your partner, and that's more like hugging and all that kind of stuff. You are very close to each other and kind of touchy. Personal space is more like your friends, right? You keep them at arm's length, but you're not like pushing them away. You talk to them, it's like one-on-one conversations. Then you have your social space. This is more like a group, right? Where you're not all super bunched up looking at each other like right next to each other. This is more like in a table talking to one another. And then we have public space, which is kind of what I'm doing right now as a speech. You have a group of people and you are like the main speaker or such, and you have all these people pushed away and you are talking to them, or even just like walking down through cities. That's usually when all this stuff kind of gets like invaded, all your different spaces. But most of the time, public space is used for just being yourself and keeping other people away from your personal bubble. All right, so yeah, here is an example of a man doing a speech, right? So he is using public space because of the group that's around him and everything. So now that we know the types of communication, we're going to go more into depth of how to be effective with nonverbal communication. Here is one of them, right? A spacing. He is talking out to people, and because of his nonverbal communications, you can see in his hands here, he is like expressing his words, making sure everything has a bit of feeling to it. Additionally, there is, of course, using it in job interviews. What is said is that your first, or how a employer sees you and judges you is off the first couple of minutes at the start of your presentation or interview. That is mainly based on your appearance, choice of clothing, and a few other subjects. So in here, you can see the way that they're dressed, right? Shows this part of nonverbal communication expresses a more formal, ready-to-work kind of person, ready to do what needs to be done. Instead, say if she dressed in like a hoodie or a bunch of ripped clothing, that wouldn't be quite as formal or express exactly what they're looking for. All right, so thank you for listening. Are there any questions that you would like to ask? All right, thank you.